Here we are. It's 2:00 in Arizona. Hopefully people are starting to drop in, and they are. So we'll just give a little bit of time for people to join. And we have over 100 people signed up today, and which is a pretty good turnout. So excited about that. Before I get into the introductions, allow me to just kind of give a little bit of a background. So my name is Drew DeAngelis, managing partner of the DeAngelis Group. I'm joined by TJ Halverson. We're an executive search firm focusing on smaller to mid-sized companies in the musculoskeletal industry. And before we get into introducing our panelists, I just want to introduce, kind of give you a little bit of a background on what it is that we're doing, okay? So we are not a broker dealer. MSK Innovations is just a conduit, and so we're not investment advisors. This venue is purely for informational purposes. So the pitches are short. The panelists will provide some keen insights, ask some good questions, but we encourage you to contact these CEOs for yourself and CCOs, in this case for Andrew, if you're interested in additional information, but you must conduct your own due diligence. But we're pleased that you're here. This exists just to help innovators access capital through this platform of what we're calling smart money. We have some accredited and institutional investors on here as well. So it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists. The first we welcome back is Kevin Rocco. And he's a name that most of us in this space know. The founder of BioRes in 2016 with the mission to improve tendon and ligament healing. Went to work building a world-class team of device professionals and surgeon advisors, and together they invented and developed a product that was launched called BioBrace in 2021. And BioRes was acquired by CONMED in August of 22, with the deal valued up to $250 million. Our next panelist is Chris Lyons, a staple at the MNVC conference, which is my favorite conference each year, as many of you know. And Chris has more than 30 years of experience in the musculoskeletal industry. Almost half of his career was involved in M&A, fundraising and startups and growing established corporations. So after his time at Medtronic, Chris has built Southern Metrics Consulting, which has a vision of enriching med device organizations in the MSK space, and with awareness towards multinational corporations to advise on how to collectively exit well. So we're pleased to have Chris as well. And our third panelist is a first timer, also Jeffrey O'Donnell Jr. He's a healthcare entrepreneur who's been creating and growing innovative medtech companies for over 10 years. He has a diverse and extensive background in sales and marketing and product development and executive leadership. Jeff is the general partner of Runway Healthcare, a medtech venture studio that merges capital and management to bring commercially ready opportunities to existing strategic organizations. And he currently serves as CEO of Runway Healthcare's portfolio companies, which include Waypoint Orthopedics, Total Solutions, and Pace Surgical. So pleased to have all three of you gentlemen. Thank you for your commitment of time and consideration in helping these innovators. So today's platform will be as follows. Each presenter will have about 5.5 minutes to present. Our panelists will then ask questions, and each segment will be about 15 minutes long, and then I'll cut them off and then introduce the next one. So today we have three companies presenting, one from Canada and two from the US. Our first presenter, we turn to Luke Diehl, CEO of SpineSpark. So Luke, please take it away.
Thank you, Drew. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Drew, TJ, panelists. Thank you for your time. Really grateful for this platform, and it's really exciting what you guys are doing for startups in the musculoskeletal space. I just have to correct you. I'm not CEO of Spark Spine. I will be at some point when we get closer to commercializing, but for now, my business partner, Kevin, is the president, and I'm just doing business development. So this is really my bread and butter. So we're going to get into this. Our technology can seem complex on the surface, but I think what makes us unique and what makes us special is that it's really extremely simple. And once we're able to sort of wrap our minds around it, I think we can produce sort of really exceptional results from a really approachable design. So Spark Spine is built on the idea that implants should mimic the electrical properties of bone, as well as the form factor and the stiffness and strength. We believe that our platform technology, which is a material called EMP, can eventually facilitate faster, stronger, and more reliable healing. And right now we're on track to get our first product, which will be a spinal interbody, cleared by the FDA before the end of 2025. As I said, our target market is spinal interbodies. We see this space as being all about bone formation, and we think that our technology can be the first in a new line of sort of unprecedented bone growth technologies. So this is the whole design of our implant, and our technology called EMP is a polymer that is extremely simple, but we think it's very special. You can see it there. It's about 100 microns thick. It's a wafer that goes in between two 3D printed titanium end plates. And when it's compressed, EMP generates a voltage. In our design, the titanium end plates of the implant act as electrodes to conduct that voltage into the surrounding anatomy. So for us, this is less about being a bone growth stimulator than it is about giving the implant the natural electrical responses of healthy bones. So this is how it works. EMP, which is a relatively common type of plastic, but it's a unique formulation that we developed. When it's compressed, the molecules realign, and that's what creates the voltage across it. A really interesting property of EMP is that it can also create a voltage when it's hit with a electromagnetic field, such as the field that's produced by an external bone growth stimulator. So it's almost like a hyper localized pulse of voltage right on the surface of the implant. We've done a tremendous amount of research discovering the properties of our EMP material, but there's also a tremendous amount of preclinical evidence, as there's an extensive history of interaction between electrical signals and new bone formation. So both on our material and also on other similar piezoelectric, dielectric, or electric generator materials, there's an extensive history in the literature of sort of improved fusion performance based on the inclusion of those properties. So before we discussed this concept with the FDA, we made sure we had our ducks in a row. We wanted to make sure that our novel electrical properties were extremely predictable and extremely safe. So we measured electrical responses of up to 5 volts and 1.5 milliamps. But most importantly, those electrical responses were all designed purposefully into the implant, and we can regulate them up or regulate them down accordingly based on what the FDA requires. And that was really important in our conversations when we did approach the FDA. Here's our team. So Dr. Moses is a neurosurgeon in Boston, and he came up with this concept. And then he approached Kevin and myself to help him set up operations and do some of the engineering work. And then we have an all-star team of regulatory and research consultants that have helped us get this project as far as it's gotten. So I mentioned our regulatory pathway, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably had some questions about this. So we've had 3 Q-Sub meetings with the FDA. We've come to an agreement with the FDA that our device will be cleared through a 510K pathway with supplemental large animal research. There are a lot more details behind that and the specific approach to those discussions that we took. The specifics of those discussions we can reveal under NDA. So here's our timeline. I mentioned we're on track to get clearance by the end of 2025. The dominant feature in this timeline is really 2 successive large animal studies, the first of which is actually starting tomorrow. So Kevin, the company's president, is out in Colorado right now, getting ready to operate on some sheep. For fundraising, we're about to close on a round of safe notes. It was just $500,000, but it looks like it's going to be oversubscribed. If anyone's interested in participating, they can reach out within the next couple of days, and we'll see if we can work something out. And then very soon after that safe note closes, we're going to start working on a $2.5 million seed round that will cover the most significant thing it will cover is that large animal study. Our commercialization plan is really a carbon copy of what's been used in the industry for a long time. We'll launch through a network of independent distributors. Our product, even though it has these novel electrical properties, doesn't have any additional training. There's no unique form factor or no unique procedure. So we think it's really a good fit for launching through a network of independent distributors. And we have a lot of runway. We do have a plan and approach to position our Gen 2 product as an implantable bone growth stimulator. But right now we're prioritizing getting on the market quickly and efficiently with our Gen 1 product. EMP is cheap, which means that we can apply it in a large number of different surgical specialties. And research also validates and backs that up, that piezoelectricity and polarization can probably accelerate healing in a bunch of different tissues and a bunch of different areas of the human body. So in summary, our implant design is really simple. Our technology is simple. I think that's one of the things that let us work with the FDA in such a friendly way and agree on a special 510K pathway. We're going to be the first implant with electrical properties that mimic the electrical properties of bone, cleared by the FDA before the end of 2025. Thank you.
Nice job. Panel, go ahead and grill them now.
That's great.
Okay, I guess I'll hop in. So this is very early, right? This is your first financing round. So congratulations, neat concept. It's cool to see the start of a new venture here. Knowing that it's new, I think I guess maybe two questions come to mind. One is technical and one is more business focused. So on the technical side, I'm just curious, how did you decide how much voltage was the right amount, and how did you actually kind of dial that in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a fair amount of literature. The real sort of guide rails that we set for ourselves was we wanted to be big enough that we could measure it, but small enough that we were below the threshold of current implantable or external bone growth stimulators. We decided that was also those were good guide rails to communicate with the FDA as well.
Okay, great. And then just commercially, I know you got a ways to go here, but is the vision to have your own portfolio? Is there an opportunity to license and build this into existing implants? Just talk to me about kind of what is your vision for the commercialization?
Yeah, I mean, we're preparing to commercialize it ourselves, but we're aware of how well this could fit in an existing implant if we had to, or if we found the right partner. So at this point, we're open, but our fundraising strategy is built around commercializing it ourselves and then expanding it into multiple other specialties.
Thanks. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, I had a quick question. How much have you guys raised to date, including the safe that is about to be done?
We're at about $750 to date.
Okay. So it's a relatively small amount. So opportunity for folks to come in is going to be decent. The main thing I would ask, I mean, of course, I know piezoelectrics and things of that nature. I mean, it's been something that's been dabbled in spine for 15 years or so to some degree or another. And I just saw an announcement today that NanoHive has struck some kind of a relationship relative to a piezoelectric element to do the same thing. Do you think that your IP is strong and secure relative to what that may be? I know it's not their technology, but it is a company they're partnering with.
Yeah, I think our technology is very distinct and different from theirs, and I wish them the best. I mean, ultimately, I think there's room for two people to be successful in this new class of implants. But yeah, our technology is wholly different from what they're working on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, great presentation and super fascinating technology. I know you'd said early on you're not comparing yourself to a stimulator, but is this technology, when you look at the voltage or whatever's coming out of the stimulator versus this, is it controllable or is it truly dependent on patient movement? And then therefore, can you really gauge those outcomes against that tech?
Yeah, so it's electrically responsive. So it's always going to be proportional to either the force applied to it or the strength of the EM waves that are put in from a external brace.
Okay. And then question on the funding. So you mentioned 2.5 was a priced round. Can you share what that is? And then how far does that get you into your commercialization efforts?
So that'll actually get us all the way through our commercial launch. And we haven't set a price for that. We're looking somewhere between 12 and 14 pre-money, likely. But I'm sure you can appreciate that a lot of that depends on sort of specific terms and if there's distribution associated with it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
I would say, too, coming back to another question I might have relative, Luke, to the clinical side of things. I know that you had said in the presentation 510K. Do you think that they're going to issue that and give the clearance without human trial? Because I think you'd mentioned up through large animal. And what's their validation that they're telling you at this point as to why that would be acceptable?
Yeah, so those are some of the specifics that I can't really give you, but I think the key feature is that there's a significant difference, and just like Jeff alluded to, there is a significant difference between our technology and implantable bone growth stimulators. So the FDA agreed with us that the interbody max product code pathway was more appropriate than the implantable bone growth stimulator pathway.
Hey, Luke.
Chris, that was a great question. Sorry, Jeff. Luke, you're starting your animal study tomorrow. I'm curious if you believe, if that goes great, will you obtain the data needed to commercialize in addition to the regulatory? Are you going to be able to, what do surgeons need to see to be able to use this clinically? And are you thinking about doing a post-market study to prove that, regardless of what the FDA needs?
Yeah, so we're definitely planning to do a post-market study, although if we start that immediately after our commercial launch, or if we wait 1 or 2 years to collect initial clinical evidence, we're not sure yet. But I think it's more likely, in sort of getting those initial customers, I think we have some basic science research planned that'll be a lot more powerful and more clear than the animal study results.
But I guess just to drill on that for a second there, specifically, what do you think the animal study will show that might compel a surgeon to be able to give this a shot?
Potentially more bone growth activity early on in the course of fusion. But again, I think that's where we can do sort of basic science like cell apposition research and things like that to sort of delineate where our advantages are and how different we are.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make the assumption that that data comes out positive, you can advance fusion. Where do you see this from a commercialization standpoint, pricing against maybe a traditional interbody or conversely against bone stem?
Yeah, I mean, the material is relatively cheap. So we've really built the company and we've built our pro formas on the assumption that we're just going to sell at sort of a normal premium interbody price point. But I think we're all aware that implantable bone growth stimulators have this additional billing code and additional charges associated with them. So that is in our long-term plan to get a Gen 2 product approved as an implantable bone growth stimulator.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are we good? Any other questions for Luke? All right. Wonderful. Great job, Luke. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we will go ahead and turn over to Andrew Morris, the Chief Commercial Officer at MY01. Can't hear you, Andrew.
You're on mute.
Yeah, just a moment here. Thank you, Drew. I'm going to get the screen dialed up, and we'll get going here.
Great.
Yeah, thanks again, Drew. Just as everyone's mentioned, thank you for the opportunity. It's exciting to be here today, certainly for me. We're going to go ahead and get there. Everybody see that well? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. My presentation is going to be a little bit different. I want everybody to really understand the scope of this solution that we've created at MY01. I want you to understand who MY01 is and really where we're going. There is complexity, and in 5 minutes, I'm going to stay very high level on some of the complexity, but we feel like we've really created a solution here that is going to change healthcare, and it's going to redefine patient care, and that's no small feat. So with that, I'm going to jump in. We're early commercial stage. So who is MY01? Drew mentioned that there was a company based in Canada, and we were founded and are based in Montreal by Dr. Ed Harvey, trauma surgeon, and 2 engineers. So Charles Allan, many of you may have met, CEO of our company. Really, this was a concept that is a major need and was solved with basic science. It was solved in the lab. So I'm in California. I'm actually currently in Nashville. So I'm all over the place, but we are based in Montreal. So a couple of just key things to notice. So in contrast to the previous presenter, we are commercial. We have our CE mark. We received breakthrough device designation, 14 granted patents, 10 pending. In our first 18 months commercially, we have over $1.2 million in sales, nearing 2,000 devices used on patients. And so we're excited. We're growing quickly, and that's really what we're here today to talk about, is really the size of this market. I want you to all understand how big this opportunity is, what we're doing to address that, and really where we're going with this growth phase. So, you know, everybody may have different levels of knowledge on what compartment syndrome is and really what the current standard of care around that is. So here's what it is. About 2 million, just under 2 million patients every year from traumatic and also non-traumatic injuries are at risk for compartment syndrome. Many of these patients come in through the ER, and the current standard of care is when these patients come in, we'll use a tibial fracture, for example. The diagnosis of compartment syndrome is based on clinical signs and clinical signs alone. And the current modality is, when in doubt, cut. So these patients report pain. Emergency intervention is needed. This is what a fasciotomy looks like. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's not benign. The risk of missing a compartment syndrome far outweighs an unnecessary fasciotomy. So really, this is the standard of care. They're relying on clinical signs. Pain out of proportion is what we talk about in this area. And 31% of these patients will live with permanent disability. It's a major problem. And again, we're relying purely on clinical signs today, which are highly unreliable and variable based on the clinicians. So again, it's an emergency. It's serious. Time matters. Time is muscle is another thing that you'll hear. The key clinical sign, pain out of proportion, is another thing that you'll hear. So take a look at this scale. These are the clinical signs: pain out of proportion, paresthesia, pallor, paralysis, pulsionismus, poikilothermia. You know, all of these things are basically done through chronic checks by residents, nurses, attendings. It's really fragmented and, again, highly variable, but you can see how critical it is to really make sure that you're managing this risk of compartment syndrome. So I think that's the other big challenge I'll have for all of you today, is this solution does not solve the rare occurrences or the small occurrence of compartment syndrome. It manages the risk of compartment syndrome, which is massive. So I'm going to illustrate this through a case example very quickly. 21-year-old male comes in, motorcycle versus a car. You probably know how this one ends up. 21-year-old male, okay? They come in. This is, again, how we diagnose today. So no P's, no clinical signs. You can see the time going here, 4 hours, 8 hours, no clinical signs, no clinical signs. We're now at, 16 hours. Patient starts to report mild pain. Anybody on the call, would you go ahead and do a fasciotomy here? Do you think this patient has compartment syndrome? I can't see all of you, so I'm assuming that you're all saying probably not. You saw how invasive that fasciotomy is, and there's a lot of long-term risks with that. Probably this 16 hours, just some mild pain. That doesn't sound to me like something you'd want to do a fasciotomy on. So hang tight there. We're going to come back to that. The future of compartment syndrome is here. The diagnosis is here. We've completely radicalized the way this disease is going to be managed moving forward. And we've done it through technology. It's rooted in basic science. The heart or the hub of this entire platform is a pressure monitor using MEMS technology that connects the pressure to the providers. And it can be coordinated and communicated to the entire care team. So if you have a resident managing a patient that comes in, you simply insert this device into the muscle belly. You have to get through the fascial layer, but into the muscle belly, and it's instantly and continuously communicating the monitor or the pressure. I'm sorry. And it's sending it to your phone. So if you have an attending on call and they're wondering how their patient's doing, they don't have to rely on chronic or serial exams. They don't have to rely on who is there, how much experience they have. They can simply pull up their phone and look at what's happening to the pressure inside that patient's leg or their arm. And they can see, are they improving or are they deteriorating? And then it changes the paradigm to becoming reactive to proactive. It's emergent to urgent. Now, some of the questions you should be asking is, well, how accurate is this pressure monitor? The answer is extremely, as close to 100% as you can get. So we've shown that. Again, we're approaching 2,000 patient lives already in use with this. We've had 0 cases of compartment syndrome, and that's just going to continue to bear out. Here's another key. So yes, it's accurate, but what does it do when you can proactively manage this disease? What does it do? You can get to that treatment 5 hours faster. So again, why does that matter? We showed that chart. What is the difference in 5 hours? The difference between reversible damage, possible irreversible damage, to potentially losing a limb, potentially losing a life in some of these vascular cases. That 5 hours really, really matters, especially to these patients. So we're moving from relying on pain out of proportion to providing these clinicians with confidence out of proportion. And now what does that do? So the value prop and what our solution, it's not just about preventing compartment syndrome from being missed. In fact, that's a very small portion of it. It's rarely missed. It's about how late they get to it. Here's what it does. So those 1.86 million people that come in at risk, we monitor them, get standardized protocols to monitor them. There's going to be about a 3.5 times less intervention. That means these prophylactic fasciotomies that are happening today, we can avoid those by clearly ruling out compartment syndrome with objective data. Equally as important and potentially, just a massive opportunity here. For those of you on the call that are familiar with the friction between anesthesia and everybody, or anesthesia and orthopedic surgery, right now, patients that come in at risk for compartment syndrome, anesthesia wants to do a peripheral nerve block on these patients. Orthopedic surgeons won't allow them to do that. Even vascular surgeons won't allow them to do that because it's going to mask pain. And what are we relying on? We're relying on pain to diagnose compartment syndrome. By mitigating that risk, we allow standardization of peripheral nerve blocks. It's the best form of pain management. It's opioid sparing trauma care. It's the best thing that we can do. Now, what happens? Patients get the care they need, the appropriate care at the right time, and we can get them home faster. In total, that's going to reduce U.S. healthcare expenditure by about 2.5, almost $3 billion. This is massive. It's better for our population health. It saves our providers, and really it saves our payers as well. So back to the patient. 21-year-old male, motorcycle versus car. I think everybody potentially agreed. Mild pain at 16 hours, you're not going to go ahead and open up the leg. Well, what happens when you add objective data to this case, and we can actually make a decision based on objective data? Okay, So for those people that aren't familiar, 30 millimeters of mercury of pressure, that's sort of the accepted threshold. If you're above 30, you start to be concerned, okay? Compartment check number 1. Number 2, the white line is their pressure. You see what's happening. So remember, those clinical signs are not present at all. Clinical signs are not present at all. The trend is what's important here, more relevant than the absolute value. But you can see that this patient, they're clearly developing compartment syndrome. They've gone, from 20 millimeters, which is normal, up to 80 millimeters of mercury over this time. This is now urgent. They can address it. That's exactly what happened. Would you all perform a fasciotomy now, seeing what their pressures are? The answer should be yes. And that's exactly what happened. So the patient received the fasciotomy, no complications, no readmissions, received the appropriate time, and did not have necrosis. That's the big deal here. Eventually, the diagnosis could be made, but it could be too late. Necrosis may have set in. So I'm probably getting over time here. So I'm going to quickly run through now all of this in the market. What does the market look like? So I mentioned that 1.86 million. It's traumatic, non-traumatic. The size based on an ASP of about $2,500 per patient life is $4.6 billion in the US alone. What does that look like? So commercially, we're basing our plan on really levels of adoption. We've got this sort of level 3, which is single user limited indication. That's about $114 million. We've really already proven that. We have proof points that we can go after that market. It's just a matter of scaling. Getting to the next level of adoption is starting to get that procedural standardization. This is going after our trauma teams, our vascular teams, and starting to really standardize across teams. And then finally, this market that we plan to go after is really getting system-wide standardization. This is
Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Let me interrupt you. You've got 3 minutes. Let's let the panelists ask questions.
Perfect.
If anybody has questions beyond about further slides, they can contact you directly.
Yeah, that's fine. The rest of the slides are just proof points, who we are, who the team, and
Panelists, go ahead.
Okay. I got a real quick question, Andrew. Great job. As it relates, and I've seen the MY01 before, even I think recently at the MNVC meeting last year. But the thing I was going to ask is relative to the revenue model. Who's the primary contact point that's going to jump on board with this within the institution? And now that you've got 18 months of execution in the field under your belt, what's been your average time for VAC committee approval, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So we're learning, we're continuing to learn, and that really is the challenge and the complexity in our cell, is that it can be used from the ER, to post-op ICU, right? So the quickest answer to that is, follow who's getting sued when it relates to compartment syndrome. So that's your attending surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, vascular surgeons, and ER docs. They're the ones that are inevitably responsible for the patients. So building that coalition and then really selling into the C-suite, that's where we're finding our sweet spot now, so we can drive that system standardization. Our VAC approvals, this is going to be very different than a lot of companies and products you see. We're having zero problem. I mean, we have breakthrough designation. They all see the need. We're getting through VAC at 95% approval rates, and very quickly.
That's great.
Andrew, I have a compliment and a question. First of all, great work on this. I think lower limb amputation mortality rates is just something that is crazy that we have not solved, especially within 30 days. So I think what you guys are doing is really clinically important. What's the ask on the funding side, pricing, pre-post, anything you can share?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of our Series B. Series A raised $12.5 million. We've raised $18.5 to date total. Our post money on our Series A was $42 million, and we are seeking a $20 million growth raise at the moment.
And do you have anybody in on that yet?
We do. So our initial investors are in on that. And so we're really looking for a lead partner in the United States is our main goal right now.
Okay. Is that funding going towards commercialization at large, inventory, scaling, sales?
Yeah, it's mostly the commercialization. So we've got some scaling to do. We're going to be able to, with volumes, we're at 80% margins right now. We're going to be able to pull that down. Our COGS, we're going to be able to decrease almost another 80%. So this is all about scale. It's all about standardization.
Thanks.
Andrew, nice presentation. I came across this once before. It's nice to see the progress, and 2,000 devices used clinically is awesome. Hopefully you're collecting as much data as you can. And my question is data focused. What data can you obtain to compel people, surgeons or administrators, that they need this, not from a save this healthcare system $2 billion, but maybe more from a risk standpoint that, it's unsafe to not use this device? What is that data and how do you get it?
Yeah, Kevin, really, really good question and really astute point. So that is part of our value proposition. It's the highest medical legal risk that exists today is surrounding compartment syndrome. So we are collecting data from every single one of these 2,000 cases so far. So every time a patient has one of these, we have the full complement of data on what happened to these patients. So we're actively conducting a lot of clinical research as well. We have really good clinical research to back it. But yeah, the data is being collected, and that should lead to insights, actionable insights. More specifically to your point, it's going to be very interesting. We ran into that very early on. People understand that once they have these devices, by not using it in-house, you actually are potentially committing malpractice by not using this device. So that can be a pro and a con depending on how you look at that as we go up the adoption scale, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it seems like what you're going for here is this should be standard of care, and hopefully you can find a way to prove that, maybe in some sort of randomized setting.
Yeah, I think we've done that. Obviously, I went over because there's so much here, and we have so much clinical data to share. But we're seeing that. We're seeing that already. So we're seeing facilities that have had our device and then have actually missed it because they were not using the device, and immediately they put in standardized protocols. This needs to go on everybody, and it started, changing the paradigm shift right away. So we don't want people to miss cases to adopt it. We've seen that happen now. So now hopefully we can tell our story in a way that it just gets adopted. Don't put patients at risk when you don't have to.
Great. Thank you.
Last quick question, Drew, if you don't mind. The final thing I was going to ask is relative to the indication for use, how broadly is it written, from a standpoint of utilization?
If you can be more specific there, I can answer it maybe better.
Basically, what is the indication?
Yeah, it's written and it's designed to aid in the diagnosis of compartment syndrome. So it's very important that we do communicate that in the right way. This does not solve compartment syndrome. It does not treat compartment syndrome. It simply aids in the diagnosis. But what we get to is that by having, this objective data, it completely changes the whole paradigm shift,
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question from one of the attendees, Andrew, and that is, how is the pricing model? Are the probes what they pay for, or is it a reusable, or is it single use entirely?
Yeah, really good question. So we started out early commercial as single use sterile device, and they paid per device. That's how we've really gotten to where we are today. We're shifting towards a subscription model. So this is a tech offering. There's a suite of technology around it. And so we're shifting towards a subscription model moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your presentation. And we will now turn over to our last, but by no means least, David Jansen from Sail Fusion.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Are you guys able to see?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me just comment on the last one real quick. I saw it at MNVC as well. I thought it was incredibly cool. I did ortho trauma before this. The sheer amount of compartment syndromes out there is terrifying. So great presentation, great technology. All right. So today, talking about the sacroiliac joint. So company is Sail Fusion. My name is David Jansen. Everybody's got two SI joints. They should at least on either side of the tailbone. And so what we look at here is that it causes 25% of all chronic lower back pain. So when somebody complains about lumbar pain, 25% of the time, it might be actually the tailbone or the joint surrounding it. This is one of the reasons it's underdiagnosed. It's most often in women in the years after childbirth. Most people get better. My wife got better after the birth of our 2 daughters, but if they don't, they may need surgery, or they get stuck in the pain clinic getting injection after injection after injection for potentially years. This is a huge population. If you look at the people who have had chronic SI joint pain for more than a year, that's 600,000 to 1.5 million patients per year in the US. Much larger outside the US, but we've got a great market here. While I was at my previous company, I interviewed hundreds of surgeons. And as part of that, I would ask, hey, how do you feel about this? And it was 80% of them were dissatisfied with existing lateral implants that basically came in from the side here. And big reason for that is it had a 20% complication rate, including injury rate, which is just unacceptable in spine. And almost 90% of them liked this idea of an AO approach to SI fusion. I'll talk about what that is. But majority of them are still avoiding this procedure until something like that implant becomes available. The AO background, for any ortho people, they probably know it, but it's the foundation that was researching how to fix a broken femur, how to fix a broken ankle. Once they figured out how to fuse a broken ankle, they applied it to every other joint in the body, but it's not currently being applied to the SI joint. So let's talk about BowTie. That's the name of our SI fusion implant. So it's based on these proven AO principles, so minimal tissue disruption, complete joint prep, got to remove the synovial tissue, and then rigid fixation, hold it rigidly. So we talk about minimal tissue disruption. We go through the posterior part of the joint, very little tissue there, very shallow, very small incision. Compare that on the bottom left of the screen, you can see large incision going right past the gluteal artery and going through multiple layers of gluteal muscle, which can cause adhesions, gait issues. That can cause that high complication rate. Once we're there, we carve out the entire joint. If you look at lateral implants, they're forced behind a certain safety margin, which keeps them oftentimes out of the joint. And then once we're there and we're in the joint, we're carving out much more of the actual joint than anybody else. And then it's much more porous area for bone to grow through compared to anybody else. That's some data from Bill Walsh down in Australia, looking at the ingrowth and on-growth on the implant. So great opportunity for osseointegration here as well. Fixation-wise, you got to hold it rigidly. This is the kind of final principle. This is based on all the proven concepts within orthopedics that we use. Buttress implants, fixed angle screws, conical locking, all the things that work really, really well everywhere else that haven't been applied here. BowTie, similar to the name of the insert that you see on fine woodworking. Orthopedics is, after all, just fine woodworking. And so what we're doing is we're holding those bones very rigidly. We've done more than just kind of keeping this in theory. We've done a prospective study overseas. We actually took Dr. Wong, one of our founders from Yale, over there, and all the patients had every comorbidity, but even 3 months out, it was 81% reduction in pain, 51% improved function, and everybody was above a clinical threshold for success. So really huge success. But then also, we got FDA clearance in April, first case in early June with Dr. Nunley in Shreveport. This was a wonderful experience. Before the surgery, the patient had VAS scores, pain scores from like 6 to 9. And then after the surgery, immediately walked out feeling great. But 2 weeks later at the checkup, 1s across the board for VAS scores, which huge success. After the initial surgery, he booked the next so many surgeries. So we've had, I think now 3 weeks of surgeries with him. Reimbursement's key. And so we're qualified for 2 level 1 CPT codes. And if you look at the pricing there, especially in ambulatory surgical center, that's over $23,000 as total revenue coming into the ASC. And then the surgeon also gets paid higher. What's interesting about this is that we're one of the only products on the market that covers both. And very importantly, you need to have approval. Your FDA clearance needs to be for both devices together in order to get that higher reimbursement. You can't just piecemeal a piece of bone and a screw to be able to do that. We've also got a great reimbursement mode on this. We're probably the only product in the market that has FDA clearance and IP to cover the integrated fashion, how these work together. That adds to the biomechanics. And like I said, 58% higher reimbursement works really well for us. Like I said, we're FDA cleared. We're currently doing a lot of training We're getting a lot of sites up to speed. We've now got a number of contracts with ASCs going. We've got all the marketing collateral out there, acrylics, nice sweatshirts, fidget spinners. But the important thing is, as I learned when I was at the large strategics, Globus, J&J, et cetera, we're doing things the right way. So clean cap table, no surgeon royalties. We're exclusively working with surgeons. So just spine surgeons, neurosurgeons, ortho surgeons. And so that's really keeping us focused. We've got a really, really solid quality system and a robust patent portfolio. The folks that we're working with, all multi-exited, Spine Tech, Kyphon, Titan, et cetera. And then we've got a number of folks here from Core Medical Ventures, startup studio, and founded by 3 amazing surgeons you can see there. We're raising a 2 to 3 million Series A priced round, 29 million pre. We're actually, basically subscribed. We're at 2 million commitments right now. So really just packing in the corners, asking for commitments by July 19th for a close at the end of the month. And that's going to support clinical surgeon training, sets, all that. I'll stop there. Ask for questions. Thank you all.
David, great presentation and way to go on solving the approach issue with SI joint fusion. Question on the training and then adoption. So with this being a different approach, what is that training like for surgeons? And then once you have somebody trained, I understand you're early in your kind of launch here. What are you seeing from an adoption standpoint? There are a lot of SI fusion products out there. Do you see them completely converting? Are they still using some of the other lateral approaches?
Yeah, so 2 great questions. Training has been really easy. We found that every surgeon, if we do 1 to 2 sides, whether on a phantom or a cadaver, they're feeling very fast out. This follows the strategy of we just try to stick to muscle memory. So the whole technique is just like doing an MIS pedicle screw. So they feel very, very comfortable with this just by doing 1 or 2. And then I'm standing back and able to watch, and they're being able to do it perfectly. We also do some pre-op planning. So they're not walking in having to in the moment figure it out. So we're able to, say, hey, here's your trajectories that you're going to be following. Let's make sure that this is a really, really comfortable path. Can you repeat the second question one more time?
Adoption. After you have somebody trained, there's a lot of products on the market. So are you seeing them convert entirely? Are they picking this for certain patients?
Yeah, so thankfully we're seeing 100% conversion. The folks that we've trained that we're now just waiting for final contracts with the ASC or the site, they said, yeah, this is fantastic. This is, let me pull up a quote from Dr. Nunley. They're saying that this is like the best thing since sliced bread. They can see that this is easily the best product in the market. The only areas where we're struggling potentially is with long constructs, because if somebody wants to, like for example, SI Bone has Bedrock. That's anchoring a long construct. However, we have pipeline products to prepare for that. And so that's a small fraction of the cases. Otherwise, yeah, we're seeing complete conversions. It's actually quite easy with the giant market of V2s.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So to that point, I just wanted to ask you real quick, David, great job too on the presentation. One of the big things is there are so many, you have SI Bone and then you have ankle biters. And you're up to about 50 at this point, I'm believing. Being the 51st, what's the strategy relative to really making a dent in the logic of why they're using what they're using? Because they spread that share out across all these little bitty companies, although SI Bone has what they have. What's your messaging that's going to absolutely convince these guys they need to quit playing around with what I call the inverted goalpost implants, or the ones you showed in the slide that look like interbody cages that were never really intended for the SI joint?
Yeah, actually, it is interesting. There is one cage where they literally took an ALIF, turned it sideways, shoved it in, and said, hey, we got an SI product. So to that point, all the Me Too's, and I think SI Bone claims that there's like 80 on the market now. We're following science. So this is real easy. I'm a biomechanical engineer by training, and spent my career in product development here. So as we're looking at solving this, we're talking to surgeons and say, okay, what is the science that you care about? And so when we present this and they look at these, AO approach and things that they trust, they say, yeah, that makes sense. And each step along the way, they're saying, okay, yeah, the way that we're currently doing surgery is going to lead to, potentially some stability of the joint, but you're probably not fusing because you're not carving out the joint. And even once you get a couple screws across or some dowels, right, the sacrum's mush. You're probably a couple years out going to get some motion. And so I don't think people necessarily trust the research that's been put out that's mostly sponsored. And so they're looking to say, okay, what's something that from a gut reaction makes sense? And then they're also looking for biomechanics data, everything else. Working real hard on evidence generation that we can publish. And so I think that answers it. Surgeons are looking for something real.
That's good. Thank you, man.
Great questions.
Hey, David, great presentation and congrats on the FDA clearance. That's huge. Exciting to see this get into the clinic. I'm curious, the kind of ballpark, maybe I missed it, ballpark about how many cases have been done and kind of what's now your furthest post-op and what are you seeing? And because any anecdotal evidence, I know it's early, but is there any anecdotal evidence that this might be better for the patient and what is that patient experience?
Yeah, so I mean, the longest out would be the ones that we did in October. So can't do math, a little bit over 6 months. But to that point, those patients are all doing great. Unfortunately, the overseas study, everybody had comorbidities. So a few people have had like facet fusions well above or a hip surgery. And so they're kind of a mess of comorbidities, but the SI joint, if you look at the VAS scores for just that, widely improved. And again, overall huge success. In the US, we've had 3 patients and we're about to get like 5 surgeons up and going starting in the coming weeks. And so we expect that to take off. The initial surgeries had just been done by Dr. Nunley. First patient, as you saw, was a huge clinical success immediately 2 weeks out. So that's about a month out now. And still doing great after talking to Dr. Nunley yesterday, or a couple days ago. And the other 2 patients, I haven't gotten this level of detail, but he said, yep, they're doing great. So looking forward to getting that data. And we are looking to do lots of evidence generation, prospective registry, single arm, the usual stuff, consecutive cases to be able to publish more evidence.
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you. I guess maybe to just follow on, surgeons that were doing something, using something else routinely for a long period of time, have a pretty good expectation of what happens and how it goes. Has there been any anecdotal evidence or anything, that they've come back to that this is different? Like, how do these numbers potentially compare to what's already out there?
Yeah, I mean, in my entire career and in talking to surgeons, they've rarely ever seen a patient come out of surgery and be like, oh yeah, I feel great. I'm walking out of the ASC today feeling fantastic. I've personally never seen a patient with this level of lumbar pain or lower back pain immediately say 2 weeks later, hey, ones. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic indication. Now it's an N of 1, right? The overseas patients are doing great. This is just not common. And so when surgeons are seeing this level of improvement, they're getting really, really excited. And that's on top of the excitement that they already have, just from something that makes sense to them scientifically. Everybody kind of harbors this mistrust that, well, if I'm not carving out the joint, if I did a spine surgery and I didn't actually remove the disc nucleus, kind of not expecting fusion across that level very easily. You might expect kyphosis where it stabilizes, but not fusion. And so surgeons are really trusting the science guidance.
Yeah. And so last question, what do you think is going to compel a large device company to write a big check to acquire, this company? How far do you need to bring this? I mean, it's compelling so far. Where do you need to go?
Yeah, we're in talks with a lot of them. I think the number that I've seen well before working with Sale and then here is, I think a lot of companies are looking for maybe the 50 to 100 surgery range. And once they see that market adoption, my understanding is they're probably not going to want to see this grow to some tremendous level before they have to acquire it. So I can see this as a really good add-on external innovation acquisition. And there's plenty of good comps for that. I'm going to pull up that here real quick. I think BioRes is on the slide as well. So yeah, I think that there's plenty of good examples of this, and we'd love to work with these large strategics and see what we can do.
Great, thank you.
And to that point, just to expand, I mean, talking with the strategics, they have this on their external innovation roadmap. They know that they need something. None of them want a Me Too to SI bone. There's a couple of products out there, a couple have been licensed, but every single company is acutely aware that we're missing this giant chunk. And on the market reports, the highest cumulative average growth rate or annual growth rate for all of spine. This is the fastest growing subsegment, and they feel like they're missing out entirely. And so, yeah, this is something that they're really interested in.
Great. Thank you very much.
Hey, David, one more question that I had is relative to, there's no doubt there needs to be disruption in the SI fusion market. I mean, you need a second generation implant. That is obviously this with a second generation potential technique, just because of all the noise that's out there. There's a couple questions that I've seen that popped up, Drew, relative to the surgeons versus the interventionalists. I think one of those was from David Kurd. It is the $1 million question. Nobody has solved for this. Everybody questions who is the person or what is the strategy that solves for this? How do you play nice in the sandbox? I know your strategy is surgeon. I get that. But what's your thoughts on that? Do you ever see a coming together of the minds here?
I mean, it's been like, let's look foot and ankle, right? It took, I don't know, 20 years before podiatrists and traumatologists were barely starting to agree on some things. This is really complicated. I don't expect that we're going to solve it. This is something that I think, more importantly, regardless, like stepping back, I'm not going to put a horse in the race of like, okay, as a spine surgeon or a well-trained interventionalist pain doc who's qualified to do it. Not my argument. However, I think commercially, if you look at the providers, there's strategics that exclusively focus on surgeons. There's strategics that exclusively focus on pain docs. And so that's really the divide. And so from a commercial standpoint, that's really a large driver for this. However, at the same time, I mean, I've spent my career working with surgeons, tons of relationships, and we're glad to continue that. I appreciated your point earlier that, there should be a second generation, and that first generation has to expand out into larger markets because otherwise they're going to see stalling growth. It's the same reason that we're not using BAKs or ray cages for spine surgery, right? The world has evolved. We're on the 50th generation of spine surgery. It's about time for something for SI fusion.
Yeah.
David, do you think, without putting a horse in the race, do you think that this approach would enable the interventional pain guys to be able to do this more easily because of the approach? They're used to kind of coming in that way anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really simple procedure. So we can do a case in less than 25 minutes, although never quote a time to a surgeon because they will try to beat it. But to that point, it's a very, very fast procedure. Everything's on rails as soon as you find that initial trajectory. And once you do some of that pre-op planning, even the C-arm view of getting your trajectories is incredibly simple. So most of the planning most of the trajectory can be figured out before you ever make an incision. So yes, this is incredibly simple. It's also still surgery. And so, I'm thankful at this point working with surgeons that, are cutting out every day. And, it's simpler. Like the training process for us now is a little bit lower risk because we know kind of the background of their surgical experience. But yeah, I do think it'd be easier.
Awesome. Well, I just want to kind of wrap things up now. Thank you, David. Great presentation. Actually, thanks to all of our presenters for really solid presentations today. And thank you again to our distinguished panel for all the great questions that they came with today, and just appreciate the dialogue and your attention today. Just want to remind everybody that in the chat, TJ has put a link to our next event, which is on August 7th, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific. And if you're an innovator and you want to pitch on this platform, please go online and apply to present. We do have a committee that reviews the data and looks at your decks and chooses the slate for each event. And so we will continue to do this until the demand goes away. And but I want to thank everyone who was in attendance. We had over 75 people at one point. So amazing attendance. And so please continue to get the word out. We need more investors, LPs. We need all kinds of people with smart money that are ready to help prop up some of these great technologies. So thanks again to all of you. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
Thanks,
everybody.
TJ.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.